Hello everybody, welcome to jurycentral.com online classes for law exams. So today I will be discussing with you the contemporary legal events of the year 2020 to 2021. So I will be discussing with you the most important legal current affairs. So let us start. The first is shocking, disturbing. This was the observation of Supreme Court on cops filing cases under scrapped section 66A of IT Act, and a notice has been issued in this case in the present month. The Supreme Court of India issued notice to the central government for the continued use of section 66A of the Information Technology Act 2000, the IT Act, despite the provision being struck down from the statute books as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in its landmark judgment Shreya Shinghal versus Union of India. The court has directed the centre to file a counter affidavit within 4 weeks, and another week has been granted for a rejoinder. The petition has been filed by People's Union for Civil Liberties. Let me tell you, the case citation is People's Union for Civil Liberties versus Union of India and others. So in this case, the Supreme Court has issued notice as to taking into cognizance that even after scrapping of section 66A from IT Act in its famous landmark judgment called Shreya Shinghal versus Union of India, still the police authorities registered case under this section. The erstwhile section 66A of the IT Act provided for punishing for sending offensive messages through communication services. That's what section 66A of IT Act dealt with. The Supreme Court struck it down in its entirety, calling it violative of Article 19 Clause 1 subclause A, that is right to freedom of speech and expression, and not saved by Article 19 Clause 2 of the Constitution of India, which provides for reasonable restriction. Then the next is, this is UP's two-child policy. So in a draft Uttar Pradesh Population Control, Stabilization and Welfare Bill 2021, so this is the name of the bill, the government, Uttar Pradesh government, it means, aims to incentivize one-child families and reward those with 2 children with perks in government schemes, rebates in taxes and loans, and cash awards if family planning is done, among other soaps. Disincentives for those with more than 2 children include denial of subsidies and welfare benefits, a bar on applying for government jobs and taking part in local elections. Assam, also led by BJP, is mulling a similar policy. So UP government has decided to incentivize those persons who will adopt this two-child policy, and it will also reward those persons by offering several government schemes and also rebates in taxes and loans, and those persons will be eligible for government job also. And on the same line, Assam is also preparing its population control policy. Announced by Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath on 11th of July on the occasion of World Population Day. So here is one thing you need to remember. 11th of July every year is celebrated as World Population Day. These steps are aimed at reducing UP's total fertility rate, recorded as 2.7 by the National Family Health Survey 4 in 2016, a figure only lower than that of neighbouring Bihar, which is 3.1 as of 2020 in National Family Health Survey 5. Aims in this direction. So what are the aims? Increasing the rate of modern contraceptive prevalence, male contraception, decreasing maternal mortality and infant mortality rates significantly by 2026. So these are the aims of the government, and it is actually willing to, or it's looking forward to fulfill by 2026, are on the face of it in line with what was stressed at the Cairo International Conference of Population and Development in 1994. So the aim of this government to control the population of the state of Uttar Pradesh is actually on the lines of Cairo International Conference on Population and Development, which was held in the year 1994. Then also, anyone violating two-child policy in Uttar Pradesh will be barred from contesting local bodies polls, from applying for or getting promotion in government jobs, and receiving any kind of government subsidy. So by this way, the UP is actually proposing to penalize those persons who will violate this two-child policy. Earlier, Supreme Court in 2003 in the matter of Javed and others versus State of Haryana upheld a Haryana government law barring persons with more than 2 children from contesting local body polls. So earlier, even Haryana also has inducted the same policy that to contest election in a local body polls, a person need to have only 2 child, maximum 2 child, not more than 2. And if he has more than 2 children, then he will be barred from contesting in the local body polls. This law was challenged in Supreme Court, and Supreme Court upheld the decision of the Haryana government. Then the next one is anti-conversion laws. On November 27, 2020, the Uttar Pradesh Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of Religion Ordinance 2020 was promulgated by the state government. This was followed by the Madhya Pradesh government promulgating the Madhya Pradesh Freedom of Religion Ordinance 2020 in January 2021. These ordinances seek to regulate religious conversions and prohibit certain types of religious conversions, including through marriages. So the aim of these ordinances is to regulate the religious conversions for the sake of marriages. The MP ordinance replaces the MP Dharma Swatantra Adhiniyam 1968, which previously regulated religious conversions in the state. So this is the ordinance, and which actually replaced an ordinance of the year 1968. Few other states, including Haryana and Karnataka, are also planning to introduce a similar law. So anti-conversion laws are also infamously called as love jihad laws, and this kind of anti-conversion laws are there in the place to check the menace of conversions which are done for the sake of any financial gain or through force or by any influential means. Besides, the Himachal Pradesh Freedom of Religion Act 2019 that came into effect requires a 30-day prior declaration of intention to convert. Already Himachal Pradesh had this law in their act, and it requires that if a person is willing to convert his religion, then he has to declare his intention with the district magistrate within 30 days. While a common feature of all the laws is a declaration of such marriages as null and void, so the effect will be such marriages which are solemnized after converting to another religion. So such marriages will be termed as null and void, and the penalizing of conversions done without the prior approval of the state. So this is very much required that if a person is willing to change his religion, then he needs to send this notice to the state government seeking his permission to change his religion, and if he fails to do so, then that marriage will be considered as null and void. So these are the prior notice. So MP law requires 60-day prior notice, and Uttar Pradesh Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of the Religious Ordinance 2020 also requires a 60-day prior notice. But in the case of Himachal Pradesh, Pradesh's anti-conversion laws, it only requires 30 days prior notice. Then the burden of proof. The MP law places on the person converted the burden of proving that the conversion was done without any coercion or illegality. The Himachal law has a similar provision. The UP law goes further, placing the burden of proof on people who caused or facilitated the conversion and not on the individual. So MP and Himachal Pradesh actually casts this burden of proof on the individual, like the person who has changed this religion. And UP actually goes a step further and prosecutes those person who actually caused the other person to change his religion. Then maintenance and inheritance. While declaring null and void any marriage in which either the husband or the wife has converted, even consensual, unless they have given prior notice to the state government, MP's new law at the same time seeks to protect the rights of women and her child from the null and void marriage. Under Section 9, the woman whose marriage has been declared null and void under this legislation and her children will have their right to maintenance. The law doesn't, however, provide a recourse for ensuring the marriage can be protected subsequently. Neither the UP nor the Himachal law has such provisions. So, MP actually provides that if a marriage has been declared null and void and the children who if a woman begets a child outside of this null and void marriage, then she will have the right to maintenance, and also her children will also have the right to maintenance. But neither UP nor the Himachal Pradesh has such provisions. So this is the jail term. Now let us see mass conversion of 2 or more persons at the same time. In Uttar Pradesh, it is 3 to 10 years and fine amount is 50,000 or more. Madhya Pradesh, it is 5 to 10 years and the fine is 1 lakh or more. Conversion of a minor woman or person belonging to SC/ST, the term of imprisonment in Uttar Pradesh is 2 to 10 years and fine amount is 25,000 rupees or more. And in Madhya Pradesh again it is 2 to 10 years and the fine is more, it is 50,000 or more. And any other conversion, if the conversion is of any other type, then the imprisonment will be 1 to 5 years in the state of Uttar Pradesh, and fine will go to the extent of rupees 15,000 or more. And Madhya Pradesh also has the same provision of imprisonment, that is 1 to 5 years, and the fine amount will be rupees 25,000 or more. Why the law for anti-conversion? Now the question arises that why such laws is actually required. In November 2019, citing rising incidents of forced fraudulent religious conversions, the Uttar Pradesh Law Commission recommended enacting a new law to regulate religious conversions. This led the state government to promulgate the recent ordinance in 2020. Like according to their state law commission, there has been a rising incident in forced and fraudulent religious conversion. So this is the reason why the state government actually brought this ordinance to regulate such forced conversions. Following UP, the MP government also decided to promulgate an ordinance in January 2021. So in the month of November 2020, UP government brought this ordinance and MP enforced the ordinance in the month of January 2021 to regulate religious conversions. Then UP passed the bill on anti-conversion. So earlier UP has this ordinance and now their state legislative assembly has actually passed a bill and it will replace the ordinance which is already in place. The bill will now be sent to upper house of the state legislature and later to the governor for his note, which it will become act. So already it is passed in the upper house of the state legislature and it is waiting for the governor to become a law. Then judgment against which the anti-conversion law is passed in UP. This is very important because after this judgment only the UP government brought this law to undo the effect of Allahabad High Court. In Salamat Ansari versus State of UP, right to live with a person of his or her choice irrespective of religion professed by them is intrinsic to right to life and personal liberty. So this is the observation made by Allahabad High Court. The Allahabad High Court has denounced a previous single judge bench decision that religious conversions only for the sake of marriage are unacceptable, saying that the decision was bad in law. So it actually overruled a single judge bench of the same court in which the court held that a religious conversion only for the sake of marriage is unacceptable. In this judgment, the division bench of the Allahabad High Court said on November 11 doesn't take into account the right to life and personal liberty of mature adults. The bench was referring to the 2014 decision in Noor Jahan Begum, Elias Anjali Mishra and another versus State of UP and others, which was followed in Priyanshi Elias KM Shamreen and others versus State of UP and another in September 2020. So the division bench of Allahabad High Court has actually overruled these two judgments and said that the decision was bad in law. The Allahabad High Court cited the Supreme Court's judgment in Shafin Jahan versus Ashokan KM. So this case also favors known as Hadia's case. The apex court has consistently respected the liberty of an individual who has attained the age of majority. That's what the High Court said. Gujarat assents to bill penalizing fraudulent conversion by marriage. So after UP and MP, now Gujarat actually gives his assent to the bill penalizing fraudulent conversion by marriage, and now the bill has become the act. Governor of Gujarat Acharya Devrat has given his assent to Gujarat Freedom of Religion Amendment Bill 2021 along with 7 other bills. These bills were passed in March 2021 during the budget session of the State Assembly. So already these bills have been passed and Governor has given his assent. It provides for 3 to 10 years in jail for forcible and fraudulent religious conversion by marrying the person. It actually amends the 2003 Act. So this bill is also being termed as anti-love jihad bill. So what is love jihad? Love jihad is also known as Romeo jihad. It is a conspiracy theory which was developed by proponents of Hindutva. The theory is used to invoke prejudice against Muslims. The theory maintained that Muslim men target Hindu women for conversion to Islam by means of feigning love and marriage. That's what the love jihad means actually. And I don't think that I need to explain it any further. Then anti-conversion laws in India. So let us see what are the anti-conversion laws in India so far. Over the years, several states have enacted freedom of religion legislation to restrict religious conversions carried out by force, fraud or inducement. These are Orissa. So Orissa was the first state who brought this anti-conversion law in the year of 1967. Additionally, the Himachal Pradesh 2019 and Uttarakhand legislation also declared a marriage to be void if it was done for the sole purpose of unlawful conversions or vice versa. Further, the state of Tamil Nadu 2002 and Rajasthan 2006 and 2008 had also passed similar legislation. However, the Tamil Nadu legislation was repealed in 2006 after a protest by Christian minorities, while in case of Rajasthan, the bills did not receive the governor's and president's assent respectively. So, this is the case of anti-conversion laws in India. Then the next one is new rules for digital and OTT content. The new rules, Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code Rules 2021. Also, this rule was in contention in a case which has been instituted by WhatsApp against India, that it didn't want to follow the rules because it actually compels them to reveal the personal information of the users. Also empowered the INB Secretary to direct blocking of public access to specific content in case of an emergency. So this rule actually empowers the Information and Broadcasting Secretary to block public access of a specific content in case of emergency. And what is emergency? Only the secretary has the decision to decide on it. The rules which seek to regulate digital news media and video streaming platforms borrow heavily from the existing regulations and the structure governing the television media, including the content codes and the grievance redressal structure. For instance, digital news platforms will have to follow the program code under the Cable Television Networks Regulation Act. So, these new rules has been framed to contain the contents which are shown on digital media platforms and also OTT over-the-top content like Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc. And it says that digital news platforms now have to follow the code under the Cable Television Networks Regulation Act and norms of journalistic conduct of the Press Council of India, which broadly guide the content put out in television and print media. Similarly, OTT platforms will not stream content which is against the sovereignty and integrity of the country. So that's what the rule requires, that the OTT platform cannot stream any content which is actually against the sovereignty and integrity of the country or endanger security of state, which is detrimental to India's friendly relation with foreign countries, and content which is likely to incite violence or disturb public order. Then the grievance redressal structure to be followed by digital media. The grievance redressal structure that they are mandated to be set up will be a 3-tier structure. So the rules also provide that there shall be a grievance redressal structure, and it needs to be followed by both digital media and OTT content. The first tier will be a grievance redressal mechanism to be established by the platforms themselves. The second tier will be a self-regulatory body to be headed by a retired Supreme Court or High Court judge or an eminent person. And the third tier will be an oversight mechanism by the government as part of which an inter-ministerial committee will be set up on the same lines as followed for the TV industry. So there must be three-tiered structure for redressal of the grievance. The rules mandate every digital news company to set up a grievance redressal mechanism and appoint a grievance officer based in India. The organizations will have to ensure that this officer takes a decision on every grievance received by it within 15 days. So limitation period has been provided, like within 15 days all the grievance has to be redressed. How OTT platforms will be regulated? Now we'll see. The OTT platforms will be required to follow the basic laws of the land while streaming content. They'll have to set up the same three-tier grievance redressal mechanism like the digital media platform. So they also need to set up a three-tier grievance redressal mechanism just like the digital media platforms. The self-regulatory bodies in the case of online curated content can direct the publisher to reclassify ratings of relevant content, make appropriate modification in the content descriptor, age classification and access control measures, and edit synopsis of the relevant content. So all these features must be available with the OTT platforms, and the self-regulatory bodies should have the direct control to classify the relevant content under relevant category. The rules mandate OTT platforms to classify their content into 5 age-based categories. First is universal, then the universal /adult that is more than 7 years, universal adult that is more than 13 years, universal adult that is 16 plus, and adult that means more than 16. According to the rules, the platforms will have to put in place other access control mechanism, prominently display the classification rating specific to each content or program, together with the content descriptor informing the user about the nature of the content. So this is important. So every content must have a description which will tell you beforehand as to the nature of the content, and also the classification based on the categories provided by these rules. Then we'll talk about the latest cabinet committee. So like I have already discussed with you the new cabinet members, and now I will discuss with you the cabinet committee which has been formed for this year. Women and Child Development Minister Smriti Irani, Labour Minister Bhupender Yadav, Rural Development Minister Giriraj Singh, Health Minister Mansukh Mandaviya, and Shipping Minister Sarbanand Sonowal have been included in all the important cabinet committee on political affairs. So they are the latest members. Allies like the Janata Dal United and the Lok Janshakti Party have been given a miss, although RCP Singh of JDU has been included in the cabinet committee on employment and skill development. Then cabinet committee on economic affairs too doesn't have representation from the NDA alliance partners and has been reduced in size from 11 members to 8. So the Committee on Economic Affairs, the total members were 11 and now it has been reduced to 8, including Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan and Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. So these are the latest inductees under this committee. Ministers Virendra Kumar and Anurag Thakur have been included in the Cabinet Committee on Parliament Affairs, headed by Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. So the chairman of Cabinet Committee on Parliament Affairs is Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. Ministers of State for Parliamentary Affairs Arjun Ram Meghwal and V. Muralidharan are special invitees in this committee. Then the Cabinet Committee on Investment and Growth, headed by the Prime Minister, has seen the inclusion of ministers. Cabinet Committee on Investment and Growth is headed by, that means Mr. Prime Minister is the chairman of this committee, and has seen the inclusion of ministers Narayan Rane, Jyotiraditya Scindia, Ashwini Vaishnav, while the Cabinet Committee on Employment and Skill Development has new members Mr. Yadav, G. Kishan Reddy, along with Railway Minister Mr. Vaishnav. The crucial Cabinet Committee on Security has been left untouched. So none of the members are changed, or a new member has been inducted in this like most crucial Cabinet Committee, that is on security. And who are its members? First of all, the chairman is Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with Home Minister Amit Shah, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. The Cabinet Committee on Appointments, which decides on appointments from the Joint Secretary level and above, also remains untouched, with Prime Minister Modi heading it and Mr. Shah as member. So even no changes have been made in cabinet committee on appointments. Cabinet committee are basically subcommittees. Now we'll see what is cabinet committees. So it are basically subcommittees within the union cabinet to look at specific remits and deliberate on various issues, including security and the economy, and even deciding on dates for parliament sessions. So they are having the major role in deciding as to the various issues, to deliberate upon it, and also to make out a law. And it also decides upon the dates of parliamentary sessions. Then cabinet approves surrogacy bill. The union cabinet on Wednesday approved the surrogacy regulation bill. So actually I'm talking about this event is related to the month of March to April. The cabinet committee on let's say it is in March, approved the surrogacy regulation bill 2020, allowing a willing woman to be a surrogate mother, and proposing that the bill would benefit widows and divorced women besides infertile Indian couples. So let's see how the cabinet approved the surrogacy regulation bill after incorporating the recommendations of a Rajya Sabha Select Committee. The 15 major changes suggested by the 23-member committee to the surrogacy bill 2019 also included deleting the definition of infertility as the inability to conceive after 5 years of unprotected intercourse on the ground that it was too long period for a couple to wait for a child. So it has actually deleted the definition of infertility. Earlier the infertility was defined as inability to conceive after 5 years of unprotected intercourse. Now the bill says that it is actually too long a period for a couple to wait for a child. The bill is aimed at banning commercial surrogacy and allowing altruistic surrogacy. This is very important. So let us see, what do we mean by altruistic surrogacy. Altruistic surrogacy involves no monetary compensation to the surrogate mother other than the medical expenses and insurance coverage during the pregnancy. Commercial surrogacy includes surrogacy or its related procedures undertaken for monetary benefits or reward exceeding the basic medical expenses and insurance coverage. So under altruistic surrogacy, there is nothing like the monetary reward or something like benefits, but it actually secures the surrogate mother by providing her medical expenses and insurance coverage. But commercial surrogacy actually it actually provides for a monetary benefit or reward exceeding the basic medical expenses and insurance coverage. So that's what our law doesn't provide for. The bill proposes to regulate surrogacy by establishing a national surrogacy board and the state surrogacy boards and appropriate authorities in the states and union territories respectively. The proposed insurance cover for a surrogate mother has now been increased from 36 months from 16 months earlier. So now the insurance cover has been increased from 16 months earlier to 36 months. Then next one is very important. Center proposes to ban mis-selling and flash sales of goods and services on e-commerce platform. So this law has been brought in effect to control the sales, flash sales, mis-selling of goods and services on the platforms of leading e-commerce websites like Amazon and Flipkart. The Center proposed amendments to the Consumer Protection E-Commerce Rules 2020 and sought public comments on banning mis-selling and fraudulent flash sale of goods and services on e-commerce platforms, and also on making registration of these entities mandatory with DPIIT, that means Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. So it has been made mandatory that this e-commerce websites shall register themselves with DPIIT, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, and this changes has been proposed by making amendments to the Central Protection E-Commerce Rules 2020. The proposed amendment requires companies have to hire a chief compliance officer, a contact person for 24/7 hours coordination with law enforcement agency, and a resident grievance officer. So that's what the law requires. They'll have 72 hours to respond to legal requests. Among the key amendments, the government has proposed ban on mis-selling of goods and services offered on such platforms. Those engaging in cross-selling will have to provide adequate disclosures to users displayed prominently. So, by this law, the government is actually proposing ban on mis-selling or cross-selling or flash sales which are offered on such e-commerce platforms. The government also seeks to ban flash sales on e-commerce platforms if such sales are organized but fraudulently intercepting the ordinary course of business using technological means with an intent to enable only a specified seller or group of sellers managed by such entity to sell goods or services on the platform. So it is actually alternatively you can say that it also shows acting in a cartel, like only one seller is given the opportunity to sell his goods to the consumers. However, the ministry clarified conventional e-commerce flash sales are not banned. Only specific flash sales or back-to-back sales which limit customer choice, increase prices and prevent a level playing field are not allowed. So not all kinds of flash sales are banned, only back-to-back sales are banned. The Consumer Affairs Department described a flash sale. Now we'll see the definition of flash sale as one that offers significantly reduced prices, high discounts or any other such promotions or attractive offers for a predetermined period of time on selective goods and services or otherwise with an intent to draw large consumers. So let me tell you one example, like all of us have done shopping from Amazon. So every year during the period of October, they actually offer these flash sales called Great October Sale. So this only for a limited period, I mean maybe for 2 or 3 weeks. And in this period, what they actually do, they significantly reduce the prices of the products, whether it is appliances or clothes or anything. And by this, they actually offer high discounts. And like such kind of activity are actually termed as flash sale, because this is actually reducing the competition between other selling agents. So this is a reason why such kind of flash sales are banned. I mean, this is actually proposed to be banned. Cross-selling means sale of goods, services which are related or complementary to a purchase made by a consumer at a time from any e-commerce entity with an intent to maximize the revenue of such entity. Cross-selling means what? It means sale of goods and services which are related for complementary to a purchase made by a consumer at any time from any e-commerce entity. So you can say cross-selling like buy 2 get 5, something like that. Mis-selling means an e-commerce entity selling goods or services by deliberating misrepresentation of information. So selling of goods by misrepresentation of information of a particular goods and services is actually called as mis-selling. Registration. On registration of entities, the government has proposed that every e-commerce entity which intends to operate in India has to register itself with the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, like I already told you. Currently, e-commerce entities are registered under Companies Act, Indian Partnership Act or Limited Liability Partnership Act, and not separately with DPIIT. So this is the latest amendment which has been proposed under the rules, because currently e-commerce entities are only required to be registered under Companies Act, Partnership Act or LLP Act, but not under DPIIT. But now the rules are suggesting or say making mandatory for the e-commerce companies to get registered with DPIIT also. So ordinance prohibiting strikes in defense services. Law Ministry has notified Essential Defense Services Ordinance on June 30, 2021. This ordinance prohibits employees engaged in essential defense services from taking part in any agitation or strike. So by this ordinance, the government is actually restricting the employees which are engaged in essential defense services to take part in any agitation or strike. Why this ordinance was notified? Essential Defense Services Ordinance 2021 was notified in the backdrop of major federations affiliated with 76,000 employees of Ordnance Factory Board, who made announcement that they would go on indefinite strike from July 26 to protest against government's decision to corporatize the OFB. So against this move, like the cabinet has actually cleared the proposal of privatizing the Ordnance Factory Board, and against this, these 76,000 employees are actually making a protest, and they have already threatened that if the privatization happens, they will go into indefinite strike, and this is a reason why the government has brought this ordinance. What are the provisions of ordinance? So under the ordinance, strike has been made illegal. As per provisions, any person who commences a strike or goes or remains or takes part in any such strike shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term up to 1 year or a fine, or with a fine up to rupees 10,000 or both. Corporatization of OFB. Union Cabinet had approved long pending proposal of restructuring about 200-year-old Ordnance Factory Board in June 2021. Earlier, OFB was operating 41 ammunition and military equipment production facilities, which now have been subsumed into 7 state-owned corporations. So there were earlier 41 entities, and now after corporatization, they have been reduced into 7 state-owned entities in a bid to improve its accountability, efficiency and competitiveness. Now the draft rules for live streaming of Supreme Court. Supreme Court's E-Committee released draft model rules for live streaming and recording of court proceedings. So what are those rules? So let us see. Draft rules excludes matrimonial matter and transport petition arising thereunder cases concerning sexual offences and proceedings under section 376 of Indian Penal Code and cases concerning gender-based violence against women from live streaming. So such cases will not be live streamed. Final decision on live streaming of proceedings will be taken by bench and will be guided by principle of open and transparent judicial process. It provides a balanced regulatory framework for live streaming and recording of court proceedings. Cameras will be installed in courtroom covering 5 angles: towards the bench, towards advocates engaged in concerned matter, towards accused, and towards deponent or witness. Like earlier in the case of Swapnil Tripathi versus Union of India, the Supreme Court has already given instructions to the center for formulating a rule so that the proceedings of constitutional importance can be live streamed. So now the Supreme Court's E-Committee has actually released a draft model rules for, as to which type of cases shall be live streamed. Rules employs electronic evidence presentation system to capture an additional feed. And about E-Committee, so let us see. Committee comprised of judges from Bombay High Court, Delhi High Court, Madras High Court, Karnataka High Court to frame draft live streaming rules. So these were the committee members. Committee invited inputs, feedback and suggestions on draft rules from all stakeholders. So which articles grant power to frame rules? So this power has been given under section 225 and 227 of the Constitution. So these are the powers exclusively given to High Court. Then Haryana Recovery of Damages to Property Act. Governor of Haryana S.N. Arya approved the Haryana Recovery of Damages to Property Bill. According to the bill, now damage created to people, shops, houses, vendor cars, government offices, buses, vehicles and other such public property will be recovered from protesters. So like earlier, UP also brought a similar kind of act. So all of you are aware that during the CEA protest, or say the some riots were occurred in the state of UP, and several public and private properties were damaged by the rioters. So taking into account and to control the situation, the UP government has actually passed a similar law, which is the Uttar Pradesh Recovery of Damages to Public and Private Property Act 2020, and on the same lines Haryana also brought this kind of act. Key provisions of the act, like recovery of damages to properties will be made by the person causing disturbance to public order by any assembly, lawful or unlawful, such as riots and violent disorder. Like act also ensures compensation to victims. Any person aggrieved by award passed by claims tribunal can go to High Court. So a provision of appeal has also been included in this act. Then the next one is Prevention of Antisocial Activity Act in Lakshadweep. Administrator of Lakshadweep, Praful Kora Patel, is being opposed by people of the Union Territorial politician over policies he drafted in recent times. So due to his bad policies, he is being opposed. So let us see what are those policies. The first one is Draft Lakshadweep Development Authority Regulation 2021. So under this, under this regulation, the authority has been given extensive powers such as eviction of landowners, and this is criticized because it is believed that the regulation has been pushed by real estate lobby against the will of islanders. Then Prevention of Anti-Social Activities Act. So this act is actually on the same line with UAPA. This act was introduced in January 2021. According to it, a person can be detained without any public disclosure for a period up to 1 year. So up to 1 year, the person can be detained without giving any public disclosure. Then draft panchayat notification. According to the notification, a member with more than 2 children stands disqualified from being a member. So again, this draft rule is on the same line with UP's 2-child policy. Let us see who is Praful Kora Patel. Praful Kora Patel, an Indian politician, is currently holding the post as Administrator of Union Territory of Dadra, Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu and Lakshadweep. So he is the Administrator of 3 Union Territories. He is the first Administrator of Dadra, Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu. He was made Administrator of Lakshadweep in December 2020 by unfollowing the earlier practice of appointing only IS officers as administrators. So earlier only IS officers were appointed as administrator, but now this practice has been done away with the appointment of a politician in this post. Then the next one is GNCDT Amendment Act comes into force in Delhi. So on April 27, 2021, the Government National Capital Territory of Delhi Amendment Act 2021 came into effect. The act was passed by the parliament during the budget session. The act gives more power to Lieutenant Governor, and this is the reason why both the state government and LG are in loggerheads. The act proposed that the word government in National Capital Territory of Delhi means the LG of Delhi. So here in this act, by this act, now government will be called the LG of Delhi. It provides discretionary powers to the LG even in matters where the Delhi legislature is empowered to make laws. The act seeks to ensure that the LG is granted an opportunity to give his opinion before a decision made by the Council of Ministers is implemented. So here it is actually necessary that LG must give his opinion before assenting to any decision made by Council of Ministers. The LG opinion should be obtained before the Delhi government takes action based on taken by the cabinet. So that means LG has given wide powers even in relation to legislative policies also. It bars the Legislative Assembly of Delhi from making rules relating to day-to-day administration. So administration of Delhi, the National Capital Region, is administered with a legislation that came into existence in 1991. The Delhi legislature was constituted under Article 239AA of the Constitution by law. The Delhi legislature has all powers to make laws in matters except public order, land and police. So this has been decided by the Supreme Court in the year 2018. But by this legislation, the decision of the Supreme Court has been done away with. And concerns, what is a real concern? The concern is the law will take away the autonomy of the Delhi government. The next one is Drugs and Cosmetics Act, new regulatory regime for 8 medical items. So earlier these 8 medical items were not under the definition of drugs, but now with this new regulation, the new 8 medical items will be regarded as drugs. So what are the new regulations? According to the new order, manufacturers and importers are required to take manufacturing license from Central Licensing Authority or State Licensing Authority. Then what are the new 8 medical items? So let us see. These are bone marrow cell separator, then X-ray machine, dialysis machine, PET equipment, defibrillators, MRI equipment, CT scan equipment, all implantable medical devices. So these are the 8 medical items. And the next one is very, very important, Tribunal Reforms Ordinance 2021. The President of India recently promulgated the Tribunals Reforms known as Rationalization and Condition of Service Ordinance 2021. It dissolved appellate authorities under 9 acts and transferred their function to High Court. So by this ordinance, the President has actually dissolved the appellate authorities which have been provided under 9 acts and transferred their function to High Court. So what is the amendments? Cinematograph Act. So all this, the appellate authorities under this act has been abolished. Cinematograph Act 1952, Copyrights Act 1957, Trademarks Act 1999, Customs Act 1962, Airports Authority of India Act 1994, Geographical Indication of Goods Registration and Protection Act 1999, Control of National Highways, Land and Traffic Act 2002, Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act 2001, and Patents Act 1972. So by this amendment, the appellate authorities under this acts has been abolished. Section 184 of Finance Act 2017. Apart from these 9 acts, the Tribunal Reforms Ordinance 2021 also amended Section 184 of the Finance Act 2017. It added the National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission within the purview of Finance Act 2017. It has removed the following bodies from the purview of Finance Act 2017. So all these bodies have been removed under under Section 184 of the Finance Act 2017. This is Airport Appellate Tribunal established under the Airports Authority of India Act 1994. The Film Certification Appellate Authority established under the Cinematograph Act 1952. The Authority of Advanced Ruling established under the Income Tax Act 1961. The Appellate Board established under the Trademarks Act 1999. So now we'll see what is Finance Act 2017, what is Section 184 under Finance Act 2017. So in particular, it authorizes the central government to notify rules governing persons appointed to tribunals on the following matters. So central government has the power to make rules relating to the appointment of tribunals on the following matters like qualification, appointment, terms of office, salaries and allowances, resignation, removal and other terms and conditions of service. Then next one is Parliament passes Finance Bill 2021. Bill was passed by lower house of the Parliament with several amendments. It proposes for some changes in proposals which were made in Union Budget 2021 with the objective of boosting the ease of doing business and easing compliance burden. So with this aim to boost the ease of doing business, Parliament passes the Finance Bill 2021. So let us see what is the bill. The bill provides 10-year income tax exemption to National Bank in order to finance the infrastructure and development. It also provides for 5-year tax exemption to the private sector development finance institutions. The exemption is extendable to another 5 years. Bill also amends the Finance Act, Income Tax Act 1961, Securities Contract Regulation Act 1956, Central Sales Act 1956, Life Insurance Corporation Act 1956 and SEBI Act 1992. So by this bill, it also amends the following laws, and apart from that, there are other advantages also. There are other benefits also that this finance bill is providing for, like 10-year income tax exemption to National Bank in order to finance the infrastructure and development. And according to the bill, senior citizens who get pension and interest income have exempted from filing income tax returns. So this has been the major highlight of this finance bill. However, no changes has been made in the income tax rate. But the income tax slab rate is just the same. It has not been changed. New provisions to the Income Tax Act 1961. So let us see. This provision will discourage the practice of not filing returns by specified person whose case has been deducted or collected. Further, the person in whose case TDS and TCS of rupees 50,000 has been made for the past 2 years and who has defaulted in filing return of income, then the TCS will be deducted at higher rates. So this is the amendment which has been done in Income Tax Act 1961. The Limited Liability Partnership Act, the Finance Minister also proposed to take up decriminalization of Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008 on the lines of decriminalization of procedure and technical compounding of offences under Companies Act 2013. So there are certain changes as to the decriminalization of procedural and technical compoundable offences, just the same under Companies Act 2013. Then small companies definition. So here the definition has been amended. The minister also proposed to revise definition of small companies under the Companies Act 2013 for the small companies by increasing their threshold of paid up capital. So the in small companies by this amendment, their paid up capital has been increased, like the threshold has been increased from not exceeding rupees 50 lakh to not exceeding rupees 2 crores. So the companies whose paid up capital is not exceeding 2 crores are now to be known as small companies. Then Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Bill 2020, again a very important bill or the legislation. The Parliament has cleared the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Bill 2020. The bill was approved in the Rajya Sabha March 16, 2021. The bill was already passed in Lok Sabha on March 17, 2020. So what are the highlights? Let us see. The bill was passed with the objective of amending the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971. So by this bill, the Act of 1971 has been amended. It seeks to increase the upper limit of legal abortion to 24 weeks for the special categories of women. Here the legal abortion term has been increased to 24 weeks. This increase in the upper limit of the abortion was done in light with the advancement of the medical technologies, which has made it possible to allow removal of fetus even at the advanced stage of pregnancy. Then key features of the bill. Medical Termination Pregnancy Amendment Bill 2020 proposes for the opinion from one provider to terminate the pregnancy up to 20 weeks of gestation. So opinion of a medical expert is required up to 20 weeks of gestation. It has introduced the requirement of opinion from the two providers in order to terminate the pregnancy up to 20 to 24 weeks. The bill also increases the upper gestation limit from 20 weeks to 24 weeks for the special category of women's like. So if the gestation period of pregnancy actually exceeds 20 weeks to 24 weeks, then it actually allows the termination or say the abortion of the women in special categories. So what are the special categories? Like survivors of rape, differently abled women, minors and victims of incest. The bill proposes that the upper gestation limit will not be applicable in cases of substantial fetal abnormalities if it is diagnosed by medical board. So if the fetal has some kind of complications, have some kind of abnormalities, then the abortion will not be permitted. The composition, function and other details of the medical board will be provided under the Act. The bill also proposes that the name and other such details of women whose pregnancy has been terminated should only be revealed with the person authorized by law. What is the aim of the law? The amendments in the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Bill was brought about with the objective of expanding women's access to safe and legal abortion. So this is their main aim, so that women can access to have safe and legal abortion services on eugenic, therapeutic, social and humanitarian grounds. The National Institute of Food Technology Bill. So let us read in short. So first of all, the bill declares a National Institute of Food Technology, Entrepreneurship and Management, Kundli in Haryana. So and Indian Institute of Food Processing Technology, Tanjavur in Tamil Nadu, as the National Institutes of Food Technology, Entrepreneurship and Management. So the bill actually provides for the institution of two institute under Food Technology Act, or say Food Technology Management. First one is Kundli in Haryana and the next one is Tanjavur in Tamil Nadu. Then Haryana approves bill to reserve 75% private jobs for local. So by this the name of the act is Haryana State Employment of Local Candidates Act 2020, which has already been given assent by Satyadev Narayan Arya, who is the governor of Haryana, and by this Haryana actually provides for reservation of 75% in private jobs for locals. Then Rajya Sabha passed a Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Amendment Bill 2020. So let us see the highlights of the bill in short. The bill seeks to replace the ordinance to merge the Jammu and Kashmir cadre and the Arunachal Pradesh, Goa, Mizoram Union Territory, in short known as AGMU, to cadre of civil services. So by this bill, it actually replaces the earlier ordinance in which Kashmir J&K cadre has been merged into AGMUT cadre. The next one is amendments to the Juvenile Justice Act. So what are the key facts? The amendment proposes that the DMs, ADMs will monitor the functioning of agencies which are implementing this act in each district. So the supervision power has been given in the hands of DMs and ADMs. After this amendment, the Child Protection Unit of districts will function under the district magistrate. Now the DMs can independently evaluate child welfare committee and specialized juvenile police unit and others. Like the amendments authorize the district magistrate along with additional district magistrate to issue adoption orders in accordance with section 61 of the Juvenile Justice Act. The amendments also empower the district magistrate to ensure its smooth implementation and garner the synergized efforts to support the children in distress conditions. So these are the powers which have been conferred on DM under Juvenile Justice Act, like relating to adoptions and other such conditions. The Ministry of Earth Sciences invited suggestions on draft blue economy policy. The Ministry of Earth Sciences has asked for suggestions on the draft blue economy policy for India. The stakeholders such as NGOs, industry, academia and citizens have been asked to submit their inputs and ideas by 27th of February 2021. So what is draft bill? So draft blue economy policy was created by the government outlining the vision and strategy that can be adopted to utilize the oceanic resources that are available with the country. So it is actually created to adopt and utilize the oceanic resources, and the policy was drafted with the aim of enhancing the contribution of the blue economy to India's GDP, which is very important as the ocean plays a greater role in the economy of any country as it helps in transportation of goods and services. It also seeks to improve the lives of coastal communities and preserve the marine biodiversity like fishing. It will also maintain the national security of marine areas and resources. So the draft blue economy document has recognized the 7 thematic areas such as, so what are the 7 thematic areas? National accounting framework of the blue economy and ocean governance, coastal marine spatial planning and tourism, marine fisheries, fish processing and aquaculture, manufacturing, service, trade, technology and skill development, logistic infrastructure and shipping, coastal and deep mining sea, and offshore energy security, strategic dimensions and international engagements. So these are the 7 thematic areas taking into account, these are the 7 areas which has special focus in the draft blue economy document. So this has been the end of the session and I hope you all have liked it. Do not forget to give a like, share and subscribe to the channel. Till we meet the next time, thank you and have a nice day.